Now, because I'm going to be sanding this tank completely down and getting rid of this badge mount, I'm going to take this badge mount off. It's just a little bit proud of the actual edge there, so I'm going to get it off, and in order to take that off I need to break these spot welds. There's a couple of ways I could do it. One is get a pair of pliers and just grab this and just wobble it backwards and forwards until it breaks. I think that's a little bit rough, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grind out the spot welds just a little bit, just to get a little bit more movement in there. But as you may know or may not know, I'm pretty efficient with the grinder. I like using my grinder, but this is just a little bit aggressive to try and take off something so fine like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a Dremel, and a Dremel is just a lot easier to do, a lot finer work. It's a little bit slower, but it's going to get right in there where I need to grind out those little spot welds. So let's get stuck into it. Cordless Dremel was definitely the right tool for this job. I would have made a hell of a mess with a grinder trying to get that little tight little spot in there. This is a cordless 8220 max 12 volt Dremel. Yeah, it's brilliant. Actually, it's quite powerful. I didn't even turn it all the way up to do that, so it has heaps of grunt for little jobs like this. And it's kind of funny because if you don't have one of these, you don't necessarily need one, but if you have one, you always find things that you can do with it, which other tools just can't do. So kind of a handy tool. So now that I've sorted out the outside of the tank here, taking the badge mounting off, I'm going to start working on the inside. I started this when I first bought the tank. Basically, I bought some Metal Rescue and poured it in the tank. I bought one bottle. Unfortunately, one bottle wouldn't fill that entire tank up. So what I did was I turned it from side to side, left it for 12 hours or 24 hours, I can't remember exactly. And then, like after I left it for a while, and then turned it to the other side, I was like, holy crap, like could not believe the difference. Like it actually gets rid of the rust back to bare metal. But over time, it's obviously got flash rusting now. I'll grab my torch and show you if I can get in there and show you. So you can kind of see what it did to the inside of this. Where the silver is actually back to bare metal, and those little obviously brown bits are where the rust are. And I've done the entire tank. Like I moved it left and then left it for a while, and then moved it to the right, left it for a while, turned upside down, left it for a while. So I've done the entire tank, but it's left with like all this, like I said, flash rusting, which is very frustrating. So what I did, instead of doing that process all over again, because you can reuse this Metal Rescue a couple of times, so rather than going through that process, I decided to grab another couple of bottles. I don't know how many I need, but I'm going to use this stuff quite often now that I know how damn good it is. I'm going to fill this tank up to the brim and then just leave it. And then hopefully, however long it's given us to do, I can't remember exactly, but the instructions say to leave it for, check for 2 hours, leave for 24 hours. So I'm going to do exactly what it says there and leave it for 24 hours and come back and then just put something in there to stop that rust from obviously flashing up again. Some inhibitor. So if you do decide to do the same thing, I'd recommend getting more than one bottle just to try and fill your tank up as much as you possibly can to the brim if possible. And yeah, let's get into it. So as you can see, unfortunately 3 bottles didn't quite get me to the top. I thought that might happen. So now I've got the Metal Rescue doing its thing inside the tank at the moment. It's full to the brim. I decided to put the fuel cap on and pushed it in, and it just sort of leaked around the top. I didn't really care. And it's going to be pretty much awesome on the inside once it's done in, like, I'm going to check it in 8 hours, but I'm going to leave it a little bit longer than that. But when I did buy this Metal Rescue, I decided to buy the other product that they do, which is a dry coat. It's a rust preventative. So I wasn't going to use it. I was just going to put fuel in the actual gas tank, or the fuel tank. But I'm like, you know what, it's just going to be full of fuel. It's going to get frustrating because it's going to be full, and I'll have to keep lifting it on and off while I'm working on the bike. So I will use this. It's like it says dry to touch. So I'm assuming it is just like a spray, which I'm going to pour in and just basically pick the tank up and just move it around every single which way I can possibly think of, and just coat the inside and then pour it out. And it dries like a thin paint, and they recommend once you've left it there and you've coated the whole inside, if you want to use the tank again, just put a little bit of fuel in there and swish it around, rinse it out, and then you're good to go. So it's kind of simple, easy to do, and it's going to stop the flash rusting from occurring at all whilst I'm working on the bike, just prior to me using it. So yeah, if you are doing the same thing that I'm doing and you want to use the same products, I will leave a link in the description for you to grab the dry coat as well as the Metal Rescue. Highly recommend this guy here. It is just like incredible. Until you physically see it yourself working or do its thing after it's done, it's just like night and day. That is not too far from the truth. The picture on the front, yeah, so highly recommend it. And this is just a sealer, so I can't imagine that not doing what it's meant to do, because realistically the reason things rust is because the oxygen gets to them and they oxidize. As long as you seal that up, which is like paint or some sort of clear coat or anything that you can think of, as long as you can stop the oxygen getting to it, it will stop it from rusting. And this is just a water-based version of that, which you can put, and it's safe to put in a fuel tank. Okay, so now I've left the Metal Rescue in the tank overnight. I'm not sure how many hours it's been. I'll have to figure it out. Roughly 19-20 hours. One of the bottles, as I mentioned before, had been used before, so I'm not sure if it's going to be completely rust-free. I actually didn't show you the cap prior to doing this, but everywhere where the solution sits, you can see that line, that physical line on the actual, from here down is where the rust has been taken away, and you can see where it hasn't been sitting. So I can definitely put that in a bit more solution, right, actually dip it into the solution so you can continue to get that rust off. That's pretty amazing. As you can see, the color of that is is black. It went in clear and it came out black, and admittedly one of the bottles was used, so some of that blackness would have been from that, but it's definitely done something. So let's check out what, see what it did. So as you can see, it's gotten rid of all the rust. It is just incredible. I mean, there's going to be a little bit of flash rusting starting if I'm not quick enough, but overall you can see it probably just needs a rinse, because of all the little flakes of rust that have already come off. You can probably just see those sitting on top, but if I run my finger over it, it's just yeah, it's just sitting on top. It's not actually attached to the steel itself. So this is how much rust was left in the bottom of the tank, in the solution, sorry, after I poured it out. And that's just what came out of the tank. It's just flaky rust. So yeah, it's pretty good to know that all that's out now, not just sitting inside the tank. And then I poured this inside the tank and pretty much put the tank in every single position you possibly could to coat the entire inside of that tank, and then just let it go, let it dry, leave the lid off, and it's pretty much good to go. Like, it's been like that for a couple of days now, and there's no rust showing at all, so it's sealed perfectly. So after looking at this tank, I started to take it back and get rid of the paint, and as I was doing it I got a bit of hand sandpaper, and as you can see it started to get a bit of a brushed finish, which I kind of like, and I thought, I wonder what this whole tank would look like if I just started to brush it. and take off all the paint and just have it bare metal and brush it down. So what I've decided to do is exactly that. I've got some paint stripper. I'm going to strip the paint off this entire tank, and then obviously just get some sandpaper and just try and get that brush effect as much as I possibly can. And it won't really matter anyway, because I'm just going to put a coat of clear on it, and once it's finished. And then if I do decide to paint it, then it's ready for the painters. They can just take the clear off and then bang, do whatever they need to do. Speaking of painters, I decided to take this guy in to get painted, and as you can see, they did an absolutely amazing job. He fixed up all my little imperfections. It's that good, you can just see the reflection for everything. Hi. It is crazy. Like, the guys that did this are local to me. They're called A1 Motorcycle Smash Repairs. And I know there's a few local guys here who watch my videos, so you know, if you see this and you do want to get anything painted, then I can highly recommend these guys. They do an awesome job. The plan with this is, this isn't the final product. I got this painted because I wanted to take a mold off it, exactly as that is now. They fixed up, like I said, all the little tiny imperfections that I had where it may have been a little bit wavy, or paint guys just do this all day, every day. They're just so damn good at it. And this turned out awesome. So taking a 2-part mold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a 2-part mold off this divider in the middle, and then I'm going to make a few different variations of this same style of seat. So for instance, the first one that I was thinking about doing is maybe doing the lines that come from the tank here all the way through, and just maybe bring that into here. I don't want to mess with this one. I'll leave this one exactly as is, but the next one that I make a mold from this and then make another one, I'll do the little lines. I'll play around with it and try and get that happening and show that process. And then the next one from that will be basically a leather hump. So what I'm going to do is keep it exactly as is, but just wrap it in leather all the way down the sides, all the way up here, have a stitching that runs all the way along here, and also a stitching that runs pretty much where my thumb is here, one there and then one here, roughly. So that is going to be another variation of this same hump. And also I'm going to do the cutout here, which is going to open this section up and have a glove box, but also have it so that it's going to be closed when the seat's on. You can't see it, obviously. It'll have the back pad there. So just different ways of doing this same seat, but rather than destroying this one and making modifications to this one, that's why I'm taking a mold from it, so that I can just keep making different variations of the same thing. And if you have any ideas on and you think of a different variation of this same seat, and you say, hey, I would like to see it done this way, just drop it in the comments below. Just let me know. If there's enough people that are interested in the same thing, then I'll definitely make a video on how to do it. I'd love to. So yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. But for now, I'm going to get stuck into taking the paint off this and then trying to get a nice brushed finish to it, and see how that looks. Well, that's definitely given it a totally different, unique look. I haven't even started sanding it yet. All I've done is just taken that paint off and left the rust that has been forming under the paint for like the last almost 40 years. And it's given it kind of a different, unique look. I don't know if I like it. Well, I do like it, but I don't know if that's what I want to go with. So I could clear that, obviously clear the tank and leave it as is, but you're going to be left with these little things here, and yeah, I'm not sure if I really want to go to that effort of trying to cover that up with something like another badge, and just, yeah, it's kind of cool, it's different, let's just say that. So what I might do is go for a more a neater look and just sand that tank down, take all that rust out, and like I said originally, do a brush finish and see what that looks like, because I think that's going to be more of what I'm looking for in this build. So after spending a lot of time on this tank, and I tried to get rid of all the rust, but unfortunately it is quite pitted. I could still continue and just use a really rough sandpaper and get rid of all the actual pits. It's quite deep, so what I decided to do instead of just continue with the sandpaper was I used a rust converter, just like a product that you can put on. It's like paint, and it just gets rid of the actual oxidization in the rust and stops it from growing any further. I'll put a link in the description for that sort of stuff if you want to get some for yourself. But I did that, and then started, after I sanded the entire thing down, took all the paint off first obviously, and then sanded it down. I got a bit of sandpaper and I tried to do that, I guess, brush effect, where you just run one way constantly, backwards and forwards, but it's, without a machine, it's almost impossible to get it to look any good. So I decided to go against that idea and just leave it as is. It's just got the marks on it from the orbital sander, the little circles.